Hey everyone, welcome back to Make It Happen Mondays, where we talk about sales, business, entrepreneurship, personal growth, mental health, and everything in between with guests who I truly respect and I think make a positive impact on the world around us. Now, today's episode is a really unique one. Little backstory on this one. So my good friends Doug Landis and Jen Allen, we decided to get together one day and try to put together a new type of show, right? New type of podcast, new type of show that we were all going to collaborate together on doing. And we called it Authenticated. And it was about having authentic conversations with people we admire. And we based it off of the format of smart lists, where three people get together and one of them brings a guest and then gives hints. And the other two guests have to guess who that is. And then we have a conversation with the guest. And so the person who brings the guest is fully prepared. The other two aren't. And so it's part of the process, right? Where they ask interesting questions and banter around a little bit. So we decided to try that out. Now, it hasn't gone anywhere. All three of us are just bananas busy with all the other stuff that we're doing. But we recorded an incredible session with one of my favorite people, Dave Cancel, who used to be the CEO and founder of Drift and one of the best people I've ever come across. And the insights that he has during this podcast about business, about strategy, about tactics, about marketing and sales are off the charts. So I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. It is the only authenticated podcast recording I think you'll ever hear. So I wanted to release it here on Make It Happen Mondays. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Let's make it happen.
Jen, here's the question. Is your dog still on the bed behind you? Is he still like rolling around? Look at him, he's sleeping.
Just Look chilling. At him. Yeah. This dog is my closer. I have now had like 6 calls where someone's like, I'm sorry, I just have to ask you about that creature on your bed. And I'm like, ask away. And then it's this bond.
Instant rapport.
Instant rapport.
So Jen, how have you used the dog to help you close deals? Like I'm just fascinated.
Well, look at the rest of my background. You've got a blank wall here, you got a blank wall here, and a fake plant. So like I have nothing else to connect with people on except for this dog. And I don't use him. Fair. But he loves that spot. So I'm talking here. I forget always he's there. Yeah. But then he'll sometimes like tilt his head up and he's got this goofy smile. And people just like, they attach to it. And then it immediately makes their defenses down. Like you cannot be mad looking at this dog. So it's just like, I'm not someone that's like, do you like dogs? Because I've got one right here.
No. But as a tactic, Doug, as you ask, this is actually what I recommend other reps do, because we used to be able to walk into the office, right, and be like, "Oh, so you're a fisherman. Oh, I like fish too." Dumb shit like that. But now most of our stuff is blurred backgrounds or nothing, right? So instead of that, what I do is I put stuff in my background to relate to everybody. So as an example, art, my daughter's drawing, Michael Jordan signed basketball. There's one for you. There's one for you, Doug. You see that, right?
The bottle is something.
Bottle of Bows. Yeah, that's Pappy.
That's Pappy's. So, and I got my family over here, my daughter's book there. I even got the Mr. Happy books, for kids that sometimes people pick up.
But the only problem is everything's blurred, so I can't really tell.
I know. Well, I change it for different conversations. And so, but with this, and I learned this because a friend of mine, it was hysterical at COVID. He has a completely white background, right? But there's one picture. And the picture is of the dude from The Big Lebowski.
Nice.
So he's like, John, it's hysterical. As soon as people log in, right, and they come on the meeting show, there's 2 reactions. One is, oh, the dude? Are you fucking kidding me? Like, that's my favorite. Oh my God, The Big Lebowski dude. I need a white Russian right now, right? So there's that. But so there's that reaction. And then guess what? Instant rapport. Whereas if the other reaction is you don't say anything. And if the only thing you're looking at is a picture of the dude and me, and you don't make reference to that, if you don't have a comment on that, then you and I are not on the same page from a comics, like comedian standpoint. So I have to do something different. So I'm not trying to manipulate the situation. I'm just trying to get whatever slight little edge I can so that person can relate to me in some way, shape, or form, because I have a hard time relating to other people now. So that's kind of like thinking about your background.
Okay, you know what I do want to know about, John? Notice we have the same microphone, right?
Yes. Yeah.
What is it supposed to be like? Because I always have it here, and it looks...
Well, it's direction. So the best way is literally this, because these are directional mics. So if I go like this, you guys will have a really hard time hearing me. But if I go like this, I automatically am on screen. You know what I mean? So you want it so that you're talking into the mic, because
Like
if it's on the side, it's only going to pick up about half like your audio.
I think you might have a spatial issue there, Jen. Like it needs to be pushed further away so you can pull the
you, Jen, like
mic
you could go down here because
Like
you
this?
guys can still hear me, right?
Yeah,
Like,
you sound great.
Super high quality. So you could actually even push it a little bit lower, Jen, if you
Even
wanted
lower?
to kinda,
Yeah. But can you pull the mic up itself? Like
no, that's you can kind of
like just like John's doing.
Yep.
What?
You got to loosen.
Grab the middle. Yes. No, and then push up with the mic. There you go. There you go.
Okay. Oh my gosh, I've been wondering this for so long.
Okay, just so you know, and Jen, it's so funny you brought this up. It's not surprising though, but I have to tell you, I have serious microphone envy. Like
yeah, you need to get.
I feel like such an odd person out if I want to be PC. Fucking PC.
Well, dude, audio is everything when it comes to this type of stuff, because think about listening to people in a tin can. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you got the earbuds and it's like, I listen to that for like, 10 minutes. I'm like, I can't handle this anymore. But when you got like the microphone that actually makes you sound legit, like it's easy to listen to for a while.
Yeah.
So.
This feels so much better and it doesn't look so stupid. I'm really, really glad we had this talk.
There you go.
You know what's really interesting though right now? So, and maybe this is just the way the setup, the framing of it is, but like I can't see your backgrounds now because it's all kind of zoomed in on all the three of us. So I have all I see is a plant, and I only see your like whatever the fancy chandelier you have over your bed. Right, which is
not my design choice.
I think from a recording standpoint, Doug, it maxes out just like you saw when David was here.
Cool.
But for the viewer standpoint, this is why also on Riverside, just as a small tip, if it looks pixelated, like if my image looks pixelated, don't worry, because it comes out beautiful on the back end. It's just sometimes on the front end, you're like, wait a minute, this looks like it's terrible.
Oh, don't worry. It says when you go to record or whatever, it says, recording is much better than when you actually see it. It's like, 100%. Okay, that's weird and awkward.
100%.
Hilarious.
Right.
Hey, Wednesday, by the way, when's St. Patty's Day? Is it
Monday.
Today?
Sunday.
Oh, was it 17th? I don't know. I'm confused.
It's always like on a Saturday. Is that not one of the holidays that works like that?
It's always on the Saturday because that's just when you go out drinking,
Jen.
That's
when it's the easiest to go out drinking.
I don't really remember a lot about it. But...
Yeah. Oh, right. Chicago, when they dye the river green and they have a big party.
You know what's hysterical is here in Boston, it's an actual holiday. Because
really
100%. It's called Evacuation Day. So the drunk ass Bostonians, because majority of us were Irish, we like St. Patrick's Day. We actually in Boston celebrate St. Patrick's Day way more than they do out in Dublin. And and they called it Evacuate. So they went way back in the history books to figure out what is a day that we could marry up with St. Patrick's Day that is Boston, so that we can have the holiday. And they found it. It's called Evacuation Day. It's like the day in the city where everybody had to evacuate the city. So we celebrate St. Patrick's Day as an actual holiday in Boston. Like you do not go to work today.
Technically on the calendar, it says Evacuation Day and everybody knows that that's St. Patty's Day. So I'm sorry, explain this to me. What the hell is Evacuation Day? What were they evacuating from?
I don't know.
Was that around the same time as Boston Tea Party? Like what? I don't know.
Back then. Yeah, I don't know enough about
this right now.
Wait.
I think you're Googling this.
I am Googling this, but I'm Googling this because yesterday someone tried to tell me that Savannah, Georgia has the biggest St. Patty's Day celebration of any city. I would have thought Boston or Chicago.
We have parades and stuff, but yeah, I wouldn't be overly surprised, right?
Look, the South, they know how to party. But
they're just looking for a reason to party. They don't care about like what the actual day is. So.
All right, Evacuation Day.
Another small sidebar, just because you said it, Doug. Don't ever call it St. Patty's Day.
Whoa, why?
That'd be like me saying, George, instead of George Washington, like Georgina. It's basically Patty is a woman's name.
No way. Well, hold on though. In this hipster environment that we're in, now look, I'm going to offend. Okay.
I'm like, don't even go there, white man. Don't go there.
And I'm already getting us. I'm already getting us like blacklisted. I'm getting like half our audience, but like, isn't it okay to call it St. Patty's and St. Patrick's?
It is to the normal person, but if you ever catch if you ever catch a hardcore Irish, like off the boat Irish type of person guy, they're going to say, don't call it St. Patty's Day, please. It's not. Well, they're not going to say that. They probably won't call you out. But when I learned it, because I was like, oh, it's St. Patty's Day. Like, John, that's a woman's name. It'd be like them calling us Martina Luther King Day. Like instead of Martin Luther King Day, it'd be like Martina Luther King Day. And I was like,
okay. Right, so Jen, since you're Googling right now, who is St. Patrick? What was his story?
No, we have to start with evacuation. Evacuation Day is the evacuation of British forces from the city of Boston following the siege of Boston early in the American Revolutionary War. I never knew this.
Mm-hmm.
So is that around the same time as the Boston Tea Party?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It is? Because they dumped all the tea?
Dumped all the tea. We kicked them out. Then we partied.
Kicked them out. Okay. And then we partied. Okay. So that's the evacuation day. And then what is the court? So, okay. And then, so then what's St. Patrick celebrating? Like, tell me about him or.
I used to know this. I don't know it anymore, but it's like all of them. They started some weird obscure thing and then somebody commercialized the hell out of it. Right.
Right. Totally.
He is the patron saint of Ireland. But he was never actually canonized by the Catholic Church.
So he's not really even a saint. Okay, that's cool.
He's a liar.
He's a phony.
Patrick was a liar.
He's a he's a drunk. Oh, I'm sorry. That could be
but then we honor him.
What happens when you drink too much? The stories get a little bit bigger. You embellish a little bit more. You're like,
Speaking of stories, I think we need to cut some of ours short so we could get this guest on. So, so let's start with those 10 questions. So we'll start with 10 questions. See if y'all can figure out who this is.
Oh gosh.
And I will give you the first one because this is a throwaway one, right? Male, female. The male. So I'm gonna give you that one. Okay.
Okay.
Now you got 10 questions.
We automatically get that default. We just get to use. You're just whoever's the host. We get to tell male or female.
Yep, because I think that's a throwaway question, right? So
got it. Is this person? Is he in the B2B SaaS space?
That was my question.
Yes.
Okay.
Does his title have a C in it?
It had a C in it.
Okay, so he's a former CEO or CRO, one of those two. Okay.
Or CFO.
Is he or CFO? Well, I mean, I don't know. How many CFOs are you like tight with that you want to like hang out?
They're like, John, you were the biggest line item in my budget. People keep wanting more of you. Stop.
It's totally fair. It's totally fair. Okay, is he within like your sphere of close friends?
I wouldn't say close. I am friends with him, and I'd love to be better friends. But this is one of those passing nights things. Like, I'd love to hang out with him more, but he's not. Places I usually go, but he's not like he wouldn't be like you. He wouldn't be like the level that you and I talk.
Right.
But he's up there.
Right. By the way, just for our audience's sake, John and I have known each other for 14 years.
Give or take, something like that.
Yeah. So we go way back. Hence the commentary. All right, Jen.
Okay. Is he currently active on posting on LinkedIn?
Yes.
Oh, gosh, that's a good one. Is he currently in a job outside of consulting for himself? Maybe like, is his job consulting for himself, or is he actually at a company working?
So I'm fairly confident the answer is yes.
We just don't know yet what the job is.
Something. So but I don't know what his involvement in that company is now. Because of something that happened.
Because of something that happened?
Curiosity spark.
Okay, Jen.
Okay, was the something that happened a merger or acquisition?
Yes.
Yes. Kyle Porter.
No.
Okay. We're allowed to guess, right? We can just throw out questions and we guess. Okay.
Wait, I have another question. Hold on.
Yep.
Let me just, it's an add-on question. Did the merger or acquisition happen within the last 6 months?
Yes.
Okay, Doug, go.
Cool. Oh, wait. Who's the David from Drift?
Got it.
Is that it?
You just guessed.
Yeah.
Yes.
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 No way.
Yes. I tell you why. I guess dude, that was bonkers.
Yeah.
But it was like, I was like, Jen, you asked the question around merger and acquisition. I'm like, okay, so Drift was just acquired by Sales Off. This is awesome. We have so many questions about this.
Yeah.
But I also know, John, you have like a secret man crush on him.
I do.
Like, I'm going to totally call it out. I've noticed this because of your comment. This is hilarious, by the way. This is what happens when you pay attention to what people write and how they write it. Because you have made comments and posted things on LinkedIn about David. Is it Cancel? Is that his last name?
It's Cancel.
Cancel. Sorry,
Yep.
David. My apologies. But you've made comments and like, dude, you kind of have a man crush on this guy.
Yep.
Wow.
Yes, I do.
That was
for
impressive,
all the reasons.
Doug.
I mean, I'm texting him right now to make sure he's getting in, but let's see, we're ready for you. But I mean, listen to this. Founder and CTO of 5 successful exits. Chief product. 5. And that's not even including HubSpot. Then he was the chief people officer at HubSpot. Obviously, that did quite well. Drift, board member, owns 2 patents, system of method. One of them is a system of method for a behavioral targeted survey. I don't even know that you could get one for that. He's been featured in New York Times, Forbes, Fortune, Wired, Fast Company, lectured at Harvard Business School, MIT Sloan School of Management, does tons of volunteer work, art enthusiast, which speaks to my passions. Saw him driving a GT3 911 the other day on the racetracks.
Oh, come on. You did?
Oh, so yeah. Well, it was on his Instagram. And then...
I have a man crush on him right now.
Right?
I don't know, like, what's his deal?
So with that man crush, I welcome Dave Cancel to the show.
I have never heard John Barrows say he has a man crush on anybody. I hope you really appreciate that intro.
And David, after John's intro, I now have a man crush, and I've been a follower of yours for a really long time. So it's so great to meet you, my man.
Oh, that's nice. I have a man crush on John, as he knows.
Yeah. Wait. Is it a ball? Is this a ball thing? Is this a ball thing?
You can't participate. Yeah.
What's up, brother? How you been?
Good to see you, man.
Yeah, great to see you. Great to see you. Thanks
so
for
many
coming
questions
on.
for you. But John, you start. He's your guest, man. Let's get after it.
Yeah, man. I mean, Dave, when we were talking about just setting this up, I was thinking about like who would be somebody that I would want to talk to, because we talk about like we didn't want to just have.
That's a short list.
Yeah. But we don't want to just kind of take the typical approach of like the tech, and we'll get into those type of things. But my man crush on you is goes far beyond the tech side of the house, right? Just the type of person you are, man. Like family man, art, travel, volunteer, like you name it, you're doing it out there. So I'm going to start with just one of my questions for you, which is, out of all the stuff that you're doing, forget about the companies for a second and all your incredible exits, between the art and your volunteer work, like what fires you up now? Like, what are you most passionate right now about that you're working on in your life? Because you have so many different pieces to it, and you look like you're just having a blast on social. So what's that fire in you right now?
It's always been the same, man. It's always been, the one thing that fuels me is progression. And for me, that progression is through constantly learning and kind of always being curious about different things. And so right now you mentioned art. It's something that I've kind of dove into when I moved back to New York. And I mean, I grew up around art as a kid, mostly street art. And I was just curious to learn more. And art is kind of like one of these endless rabbit holes that you can never learn enough about. So I kind of dove into that, and I'm deep in, meaning I don't know anything, which is great. I like feeling in this constant state of discomfort, which I don't think is advisable. But yeah, right now it's that. I've been traveling a lot. A lot of it is art related and kind of board related. But
are you when you talk about art, are you like getting into painting and clay and sculpture and all that? Or are you following artists you like that you're learning more about and their philosophy and their way of like unpacking what they're trying to communicate?
I'll tell you the whole quick story. The quick story was I moved back to New York and I wanted to get into a community that was kind of specific to New York. And so I had always an interest in art, but I didn't know much, meaning viewing art and understanding art, not actually creating art. And so I went to, the good thing about coming back to New York, what I did was that I didn't know anybody here aside from some old friends, but like I didn't know who was who. I didn't like know any names. I didn't know anything. I went to a party. I went to lots of different parties, events, and I met a guy and I talked to him for like an hour and a half and about art and about other things. That guy turned out to be I didn't know who he was. When he left, someone turned to me and said, "Do you know who that is?" I was like, "No." Some guy named Adam. And it turned out it was Adam Weinberg. And he was, Adam was he just retired, a longtime director of the Whitney Museum of American Art here. And so like this huge figure in the art world, but I didn't know. That kind of snowballed into, at some point, getting involved. I joined the board of trustees of the Whitney. And so that's really let me go deep into it. But one more thing, the reason that we had such a long conversation was I had bumped into another guy at a party that I didn't know. I ended up buying this sculpture from this Puerto Rican artist named Daniel Lynn Ramos, and with the sole intent of wanting to donate that sculpture. And so like one thing that I was doing in tech before we sold this last company was trying to get more Hispanic people into STEM. And really with this idea of access and role models, I feel like I grew up, I didn't have any role models. And so I wanted to do the same thing, to try to help do the same thing in museums and representation. And so I bought this piece and that kind of snowballed into joining the Whitney. I spent a year and a half kind of being a troublemaker and finally got that piece accepted as a donation to the Met. So now it's in the permanent collection.
Wow.
What? Yeah. Wait. How dude, that was two comments. Troublemaker and getting your piece of art in the Met. First of all, what kind of troublemaker are you, David? I got to understand this. Like when you say that, like, are you just pestering them? Or are you like, are you doing the typical like sales approach where you're like going high, going low, use some friends?
What are you doing? My mom said my number one skill was that I was really great at not being able to be told what to do. So like that's my skill. So that's why I chose this path. And so I am a troublemaker. But and I went to high school. I only realized in retrospect, I went to an all-boy high school in New York, which then many years, like 20-something years later, I realized I was like, oh, I think I went to prison because like it was only 100% troublemakers. There's no one else who would send their kids there. So it was all troublemakers. But anyway, I use this in the context of this museum donation because I just do what, you all do, which is like, get everyone in a room. And the reason that things take so slow in this world or kind of impossible is like, there are all these kind of gatekeepers. They don't communicate with each other. This sounds familiar. And so like, I would just go around and around and around and around and just get everyone to talk to each other. And I had no angle really, so like I wasn't, and so they were disarmed, when I would come around.
Amazing. That's amazing. I also feels like you had such a sincere like passion.
Yes,
that came through, right? So it's kind of, and you talk about this all the time about multi-threading and like when you're really honest and sincere and you have, to one of John's favorite comments is like, you have a really high give a shit factor. Right. Like people are like, okay, cool. Like you don't want anything from me. You just want to like have a conversation and and in this case, passion driven. That's so rad.
Very much like a sales approach because like I wasn't convincing them. The truth is that there was this amazing curator at the Met who had wanted a work by this artist for a very long time. I had to discover that. I didn't know that at the time. So I had to go through the discovery process. And then his name is Ian Altavier. He's an amazing curator and he's actually now left the Met and he's at the MFA in Boston. So you need to meet him, John.
Yeah, love to.
Yeah.
Love to. Now, I know you don't know. Jen, do you know Dave?
No, I don't roll in these circles. This is like a total treat for me. Are you kidding me? I'm just trying to look cool right now. I'm like, no, I don't.
That's so great.
I mean, I think we were connected obviously through Drift at first and the Boston connection because they built it out there. But yeah, I mean, HubSpot and 5 other exits. And so Jen, floor is yours as far as questions, because I know a decent amount. I think Doug knows a decent amount of them, but I don't think you know much about it.
No, actually, I don't really. I mean, I know of you, and I know you've done amazing things. But when John read off your background, I was like, holy shit, I didn't.
That's kind of like my question. You said that you didn't really have a role model growing up, yet you had like success after success after success. Like, is there someone at a later stage in your life that became a role model, or was that totally just from within?
I didn't have role models kind of growing up that I can remember, but I did have a mentor, like mentors and even role model, like sometimes mentors are, you can only see them are people that you gone through or are kind of like painful most of the time to work through, that really have their best, your best, they're trying to create your best self. Like, you don't know it at the time. And you can only see those in retrospect, right? So like, I worked for this amazing man when I was in high school, kind of going into college. So like 17 plus. And his name was Sam Lee. He turned out to be my first mentor. I didn't know it at the time. I worked at this job, was a warehouse. He was the most successful person that I had ever met. Definitely multimillionaire back then, which was like unheard of. But no one knew it. And the only reason that I got to work at his company, one of his companies, he had many, was that my best friend growing up, George, his parents were Taiwanese, and they convinced him to give me a job, because what I didn't know when I started working there was that I was the only person in any of his companies who was not Chinese. Zero. I was just me.
Wow.
So he wouldn't hire anyone who was not Chinese. So I worked for him for a long time. He taught me so much. So many of the lessons that I, in all of my businesses that I look back to began with him. He told me to read, which I think is still one of my number one books, which is Made in America by Sam Walton, another Sam, about the founding of Walmart. And so like, he taught me so much, and he gave me my biggest compliment that I've ever gotten professionally. Might not translate, but when I left and I went back to school at that point, he said, he's very strict. And so he said, you work like a Chinese person.
Wow.
If you knew Sam, anyone who's grown up in that culture, all my friends who are from China, they're like, oh my God, that's the biggest compliment he could ever give you. And it just meant like, I was one of them. Like I had that work ethic, which I think I could do.
What was that job that you did? What hired you?
I carried warehouse in Woodside, Queens, and we basically sold health and beauty aids and all this stuff. If you go in a bodega or in a 7-Eleven, like everything that's on the counter, lighter, cigarettes, this, that, whatever, everything they see behind the counter, film, back in the day when there was film, we would sell all those to all the bodegas kind of in New York. That was one of his businesses. He had a lot of other business. By the end, I started unloading trucks, and by the end, I was doing most of the ordering there, which was I didn't know at the time, it was a big responsibility.
I got a question, because this is actually something I'm actually genuinely concerned with in general, and you brought it up, the work ethic piece. Mm-hmm. I'm in the middle right now, because what I'm feeling like my dad, these kids don't work, right? Earn it, that type of stuff. But I also look on the flip side of this, and Richard Harris is actually the one, and I told you guys this before, like he got me thinking a little bit differently as far as, talking about all these kids and, they don't get it, whatever. And he's like, John, a lot of that probably comes from jealousy, in the sense that you didn't have those tools, you didn't have those opportunities, we didn't. So therefore, we're crapping on these kids because they don't have the work. They also didn't have we also didn't have the opportunities. You know what I mean? Like now, anybody can make money in any way. So where's your work ethic? Did that come from your parents? And then how do you look at work, especially from somebody who's hired so many people, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you uncover that work ethic? Because that's the one thing it's hard to teach. It's hard to teach passion. It's hard to teach skill. It's hard to, really hard to teach grit and work ethic. So what's your view on that? And how have you done that through all the organizations you've worked with? Because the cultures you've created are just, quite frankly, insane. what you've done. So how do you look at work ethic? Because that's the part I'm just getting nervous about right now.
It's really, I think I share your same struggle. I struggle with it a lot. And even right before like the last 2 years of running Drift, it was becoming a bigger and bigger struggle for me, really big struggle, right? It was really hard. I think, to answer your question, like work ethic is like one of the most important things to me. I'd say I have only like 3 qualities, right? I grew up super poor and I had like nothing to lose. And like, you have nothing to lose. Like, so like I had like, even though starting companies, at the time and still it was kind of risky, like I didn't have anything to lose. Like, so like if I like failed, it didn't mean much because I didn't have a lot of social pressure. I didn't have pressure from home. I didn't have internal pressure really. So, and then it was, then I love to learn, kind of obsessed with learning and progression. And the third secret was just work ethic. I figured out at some point, when I had imposter syndrome, and I still do many, many times in many of the companies, like, but I figured out kind of early on in my career, I was just like, I will outwork anyone here. Like of all the people that I was surrounded with, and I was surrounded with so many brilliant people, in my time in Boston, I was just like, I will crush everyone 100%. Like, and that's where I gained my confidence. My confidence came from, I will outwork them for sure. Yep. And try to outlearn them if I could.
Yeah. I feel like that's such an East Coast, Northeast, like it's such a Boston kind of mentality. It's like, I'm going to out hustle you. Like in California, we're all a bunch of lazy fucks.
I'm going to outdress you. That's what I do in California.
I can say that because I grew up here, right? So, but I'm really curious. So back to John's question, like, how do you evaluate someone's work ethic? Because that's part of the challenge, right? It's like, especially in this hybrid or remote environment where you're like, and especially if you got sales teams that you're managing or even engineering teams, you're like, okay, so how do I know? And by the way, do I care if you work 8 solid hours or do I want output and outcomes? Is that more important? And if you do that in 5 hours, it doesn't matter. I'm just curious.
The truth is both, right? Like, I think we're like, in this world where everyone wants to talk about like work smarter, work whatever. And it's like, the truth is like, you have to work hard before you can ever figure out how to work smart. Like the work smart does not come before you work hard. Right. And so like, cause work smart is the last, like 5%, the last 10%. It's not like the bulk of it. So you have to work hard. And so there's no way around it. I think it's super important, it was critical for me in like hiring people. And I think there's the good thing is if you pay attention, and I'm naturally an introverted person. And so I think, I learned English watching TV, watching like Gilligan's Island and Brady Bunch when I was like 6 years old.
No way.
Yeah. And
that's amazing.
Because, if they had ESL back then, I never saw it. So I learned on my own. But, I think that plus my personality has always, led me to a place of like being the natural observer in the room. And so I'm naturally the person who would just observe just behaviors, how people are saying things, what word choices they're making, what they're physically doing, like all those things, which I try not to tell people because then they're freaked out that they're like in a lab and I'm watching like every single thing that they're doing, which I don't want them to think, but the truth is that I am. And so
cat's out of the bag now.
When you observe, when you genuinely observe and you can like get out of your own self and really observe, then there's so many tells, so I would look for so many tells in the interview process and obviously in past work history, if they had any, how they worked when they were a kid, did they work when they were a kid? There were so many tells. And then I would also try to figure out one thing that I mentioned briefly, which was, what kind of pressure was on them? Because I think the more accomplished someone is early in their life, probably they're in a situation where they have a lot of social and family pressure on them, which then puts them in, which is hard kind of in the environment that we're talking about, because like they're not ready. They've probably never failed. And they're probably ready not, and they won't do well kind of failing. And as you know, most of the learning process and most of kind of early stage or whatever stage you're operating in is just a series of failing over and over again. And you try to learn Ideally, as you get older, then you get smarter a little bit. And then you're like, okay, I'm not going to learn only from my failures. So I'm going to learn from other people's failures. But kind of early on in your career, you're learning mostly through your own failures. And so you have to have someone that's willing to fail and kind of, learn from that. And I think the most magic words that any candidate or anyone that has ever worked with me would ever say to me are the words, I'll figure it out. As soon as they said that and they actually did it, those were the people that were bet on. Like, they didn't know how to do it. Maybe they tried and they failed, but they said, don't worry, I'm going to figure it out. And they actually went and figured it out. That is one of the most rare qualities that you will find in someone that you work with that I can pick up.
Dude.
Yes.
That's just a nugget right there. That's so good. Go, Jed.
Very.
So you've been the CEO of like some big organizations. And like John, I kind of feel like, I guess, here's what I'd say. I think a lot of sellers who work really hard just feel unseen. And forget sales, like just people who work really hard feel unseen. Right. I'm super curious about, as a CEO who's running large businesses, what makes someone catch your eye inside of a business? So let's say I'm like working at the front line. I don't have a VP title. I don't have an SVP title. I'm just like a frontline worker. Like, how does someone catch your eye inside of your business?
Yeah, I mean, big is relative. So like, these companies are still in the hundreds or low thousands of people, but like, so you can see it. I don't know how this works I say that because I don't know how it works if you work for a company that has hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people. But like, in these kind of environments, like, it's pretty clear. And I usually like call BS on people that say like, oh, they're so amazing, but no one sees my work in the environments, in the context that I'm talking about, because it's not true. Because like, everybody knows, like, those people that are, doesn't matter what level, interns, co-ops, whatever, the people that are actually like really great, progressing, learning, continually getting better, just crushing, everybody knows. They're not a surprise. I think I usually hear those comments from people that think that they deserve recognition, but they haven't simply put in the work, or they're putting the work, or they're not progressing. They're stuck. And that might be them not continuing to learn. It might be like the environment that they're in, the company not being at the right stage or not growing fast enough to kind of keep up with where they are, which is off, which happens. I think, one thing that I would always tell people early throughout their career, I would kind of draw a graph and I would say like, look, and because I was obsessed around everyone's personal progression, right? Getting better, taking on more responsibilities, learning, because I felt like if everyone around me was doing that, then things would naturally be great for me because I can only be around people that are passionate and curious, but also like things would be great for the company. And I would say, what I would draw, I would say, look, you have your growth, your personal growth path professionally is, can go up and to the right like that. It's never a straight line, it goes like this. It could be flat line. It could be going down over your career. Like, but let's assume it's going up. Then you're at a company, right? That company could be growing faster than you are in terms of like what you need to know. And so then we might have to, at those points, we have to bring in people from the outside because the people inside were just growing too fast to try to keep up with that growth. Or the company might be flatline and you're growing, you continue to grow. It's probably not the right environment for you. And it might be, time to make a change, or the company is declining and you're growing, whatever, but the truth is it's very rare to be in a company. And this is where I like the stage that I do, where the company is growing and the individuals are growing. And so that when those two things happen, that's when you continue to get new opportunities as that individual. At some point, the company might pass you or you might pass the company. It might be time to move, but like you have to always be thinking about how is the company growing, from an opportunity standpoint. And then how am I personally growing and am I keeping up? Am I outpacing or, are things going in the wrong direction?
Can we just stop for a second? That is like, as an individual thinking about your career, because constantly everyone's like, what's next? That is such a great way to frame how to think about, are you in the right place right now? And is it time to go do something else, either in the organization or somewhere else?
Thank you. I mean, I think you have to separate, everyone thinks about how they're growing, right? But they don't do it relative to anything. And it has to be relative to the environment that you're in. And once you do that, then you become less, the company and the individual becomes less emotional about like, it might not be a right fit anymore for you, right? Because like we might not be growing at the same speed that you're growing, or you know, we're growing faster than you. Then we're going to have to actually bring in someone that might be above you, and it's not because you're growing, but it's because things are just growing too fast and it's hard to keep up, right? For all of us. And that, you know, I would say that about myself. That would include me. Like at some point, and I would say this from like day one, at some point we might have to bring in someone else to run this company if I cannot keep up with the rate of growth of the company, and that's okay.
It's actually super interesting that this is coming up right now, because literally the half hour before we kick this off, I had a sales meeting with a group who got to 10 million ARR. That, hey, good for us. And they got a lot of marketing help to begin with, and they were selling small solutions, you know, $100, $300, whatever it was. So these kids, like they're good, right? But they need to take it to that next level. And what she was afraid of, she's like, we're starting to, because we're selling upstream now, and we're really going for, we're trying to go from 10 to 20 this, you know, very soon. And she's like, how do you hire? Because we want to hire ballers now, but we're afraid that all the people that got us here who've never actually hit quota, they're good people, but she's afraid that these new people coming in will, first of all, scare these people, but also then look at that level of talent, to your point, and realize, wait a minute, I'm the top of the food chain right here. These people are actually dragging me down, not pushing me up. She's like, so how do you know, she asked me the question, like, how do you deal with that?
The reality is you might have to get rid of a lot of those people.
Yeah, I totally.
You know, because I've experienced this, you know, at HubSpot, I experienced this pretty sharply because, you know, I had to like reboot the product engineering design teams. Like everyone, I had to take the team effectively to zero and kind of rebuild it. And one of the reasons I was doing that was that the people that I wanted to hire, this is especially true for salespeople and for engineers when you hire them. The best people, the first thing that they were going to do in the hiring process is look at the people around that were inside the building. And if they weren't up to whatever they considered their caliber, their snuff, they weren't good enough, whatever, then we're not going to come, right? And so like if I wanted this team, they were not going to come to join this team. They only wanted to be around people like themselves or at that level. And so, it's a hard transition to make. The truth is, I'm sure there are a handful of, or some percentage of stars in that organization that can make that migration, but a lot of people might not. And that's just normal. That's okay.
Yeah. I mean, I told her the one thing, if you don't have the team to support that, right, where you're going to bring A players and you got a bunch of B's and C's, well, you at least have to show the A player, if nothing else, that you're investing in their growth, because every A player I know wants to get better. And so it might be one thing, hey, the talent around me isn't that great, but they're investing in this, they're doing this for me, I'm growing with this company. I might not be growing with the people who are on my team necessarily, but I'm growing with this company. And so that's kind of the A player mentality in a lot of ways. But yeah, you're right. I mean, sometimes you just, and that's what I'm fearing right now in the whole tech industry, is what got us here will not get us there. And I mean that from a structural standpoint, a process standpoint, and a people standpoint, quite frankly.
I think that's totally a solution that could work in a sales team when there's a lot of kind of development and investment. I mean, I'd say the problem with engineers is that they're snobs. And so there is not much, being an engineer, I was an engineer, like there's not a lot, they don't get a lot of personal development. They don't have those kind of the training and the stuff that a company can invest in. And so like for them, it's really like a pure, like, who's the best? I want to be around the best kind of thing.
So that's why nobody's coming to the Patriots with free agency, by the way.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry.
Hey, David, I'm curious. So you got a technical background. It sounds like. But John, did you mention that at HubSpot you were like the chief people officer? Is that
chief product officer?
Chief product officer. Okay, all right, that makes way more sense. I'm like, excuse me, how the hell do you go from technical engineering to be
the other P?
Got it. I'm curious, as you kind of evolved into the C-suite, and in particular too as CEO, what were some of the hardest decisions that you had to make that you now look back on and be like, might have gotten that wrong?
Yeah, a lot. So many things wrong. I think the hardest thing going from like an engineer, but also from an engineering standpoint or the kind of product standpoint, to kind of leading entire companies was that, I used to, as an engineer, you're biased by like whatever your skill set is. And so my bias was that the answer to everything was build the right product, have the right technology, whatever it was. But like it was kind of 99% on the engineering and product side. Like that was kind of the determinant of the company. And so and then halfway through my career, I figured out, oh no, it's 99% people and it's 1% everything else. Right.
Yes.
It's all people. And so there's good and bad at that. I'm just like the bad is that people are an unsolvable problem. And so, you can never solve a problem. You can only, when it comes to an individual, it comes to a team, comes to a company, you can only solve problems for a specific time frame and a specific group of people, right? And the minute that you introduce new people, you remove people. So you change something about the context, you change something about the market, you change something, something outside of that affects your context, like the whole thing breaks again. And then you start,
sure.
Right? And so it's an unsolvable problem, like this puzzle. And so you can only solve it for like a specific time. And then you expect it to break. So I wish I would have known that, that would have saved me a lot of time and frustration, right? But because I thought everything could be solved with this one hammer that I had, which was like the product engineering side of things, but it's not true because it's people inside the building. How do you get those people motivated? How do you get them to build the right thing? How do you get them to talk to customers? How do you get them to sell correctly, to service, to market, to do all those kind of things? How do you get them to work on a team? How do you get them to work in a big, as the team is growing and all the people issues that come up? And then it's people outside the building. If you have investors, if you have all your customers, obviously that you're trying to keep happy, your prospects, all these people, it's all people issues, emotional issues, biases, all these kind of things, all the things that are changing in their world. And so it's an unsolvable problem. And so that's the fun of it. But the frustration is man, this thing can never be solved, not until the robots are buying from the robots, it's unsolvable.
So some people here in this room think that that's going to happen eventually. I am not one of them, but we're just saying.
We're all living in the matrix.
Oh, you too, Jen?
No, I said John is like this. Right.
We're all in the matrix right now.
We're all going to get replaced.
Yeah. Right. No, I don't think we're going to get replaced. I just think we're living in the matrix, so it doesn't matter. You know what I mean?
Sure, in the matrix.
See, he believes it too.
Okay. Wait. So, what colored pills are you two taking? I don't know.
All the colors.
Fine.
No, I want to stay in this world. I want to know what steak tastes like. I don't want to fight aliens. I don't want to sleep on benches. I'm not. If I have to, if you force me to, I will fight. But please leave me in this nice, comfortable world right now.
Yes, steak is pretty amazing. So, okay. What? 3 weeks ago, a big announcement was made, Sales Loft and Drift, right? Yeah. Yay. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Love that. I mean, look, I've been a Sales Loft fan, friend of Kyle's. We're at Emergence Capital. We're investors in Sales Loft. So I've been super tightly connected to them for a long time. Why do you think this is really good for companies today? I always wonder about mergers and acquisitions, because look, they're hard to do because you got to integrate people, technology, process, a whole lot of stuff to get it to work. I worked at Salesforce and Oracle at the time, making a whole bunch of acquisitions. A lot of times they don't work really well. Why do you think this is going to work, and why do you think this is good for companies today?
Yeah. Well, how does it work? It's really difficult, as you know. Putting companies together is extremely difficult. I'd say the kind of values and kind of things that we've been thinking about are tightly overlapped. I've known Kyle since actually before he started that company. I met him when I was at HubSpot, and it was right before he started that company. And so have been able to stay close throughout this whole progression. I think the reason I'm excited about it from a customer standpoint is that, we continue to need different perspectives, and whatever perspective you have as a company, kind of really in your early days, kind of what that worldview is, kind of builds the architecture really from a product standpoint, builds the culture around that. And I think we need different perspectives. And I think, we're coming at it from, watching SalesLoft, not speaking for them, but just watching them. They're really coming from the opposite angle of kind of all of the incumbents today, really starting with that SDR. So they're kind of like flipping things on the other side. And from Drift, we did the same thing, but we started by flipping and focusing on the buying experience from the customer standpoint, right? And we did that through bots and on the website and kind of sold them through the marketing team. But like we were trying to focus on that buying experience, as was SalesLoft, but they were doing it through the SDRs primarily, and now leads. And so I think this idea of kind of flipping the perspective of the starting point not being a centralized database, the central control of internal systems, and the starting point really being the buying experience is what's exciting to me, because I think those are the companies that are doing the best from a buying experience standpoint, especially the more commoditized their market is, the ones that are really standing out and doing better. And I think that's great for all of us, as we are all customers at the end of the day.
Yeah, amen to that.
Love it. All right, Jen, what you got?
Here's something I've always wondered. You've mentioned a bunch of times in this conversation that you believe you never stop learning. And by the way, like, I think that is one of my favorite characteristics of a leader, is a lack of ego and openness to continue learning. But when you get to your level, like, where's David going to learn? Who are you learning from? Like, how are you learning? Because you're already all the way up here. So
no, I'm not.
Where do you go? Is there some secret club?
You gotta redefine what up there is then.
I love it.
I'd say, one thing that we've all heard the saying, the average of the 5 people you spend the most time around. We all have heard it, but almost no one that will actually change their environment because of that. They'll be like, yeah, I know that, but I continue to hang out with the same people, right? And the same thing. And it's like, so they don't actually know it. They think they've heard it, they don't know it. So one thing that I did accidentally throughout my career, which I only saw afterwards, was that I continued, I kind of think about, I'm like Forrest Gump, like stumbling into different groups. I moved to Boston. I stumbled into a group of people that were starting companies, and I was at the time intimidated. I was just like, wow, they're so smart. They did this, they went to that school, blah, 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 blah. And then, naturally spent all my time around them. And then what happens is that you average up to all of them. And then I would stumble, a few years later, I would stumble into another group, spend a lot of time with them. You average up. I just kept doing that. That's been the way that I've kind of forced to rewire my mind in terms of like what's possible, and been able to, because of this kind of like always surrounding myself, always challenging myself, and putting myself in uncomfortable positions, like around people that I'm always intimidated by, like that's helped me average up. Even this thing of joining this board of the Whitney in New York, the people who are on the board at the Whitney are mental, like beyond. I spent the first year, I've been in there for like a little over 2 years. The first year I was just sitting there like, oh my God, what? Just no idea. I'm like Googling. On Google. I'm like, oh, that's that. Oh, okay. Got it. But you know what happens? Like, it's been 2 years later, it's starting to become normalized in my mind. Like, it's becoming like normal. And so what they think about, what they talk about, like how they push themselves, like what they're like achieved to do. And so like, I'm rewiring my mind right now to think about, okay, what's the next jump that I want to make in whatever area of my life? Because like, I've changed my environment to like make things normal. And so it's the number one advice I give people. But I know 99% of people won't do it. But like, if you can, do it.
Sorry, Dave, what's that quote? Because I honestly, I hate to say this, but I have never heard it, and I don't know.
You're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time around. So whoever those people are, like if you look at them and you take the high and the low, you're going to be the average. You will never exceed that group. You will not be better than that group, right? And so you have to continue to, because we just normalized to that group. And so if you're not constantly putting yourself around like new perspectives, it doesn't mean that you have to like abandon everyone in your life. Everyone takes like these extremes, like, oh, that means like I have to like say goodbye to my family and my friends forever. No, everyone's like so ridiculous with that stuff. So no, it's like, but you have to like start introducing people that are like, that seem so far ahead of you in whatever way you do it. And you start to learn from those people. And the good thing about podcasts like this and the age that we live in now, which wasn't true for most of my life, was like, you can watch, you can read, you can watch videos, you can watch podcasts, you can consume from all of like, whatever field you're in, all the greatest minds, you know, that exist today. And because of video, I watch a lot of stuff of a lot of people that I admire who have been dead for a very long time, right? And try to learn from, you know, the stuff that they said or that they wrote in terms of biographies.
Killer. And to continue on that thread, because I think it comes back. And we'll finish. I got one real one and then one real quick question for you before we let you go. But the first one is about imposter syndrome. You had mentioned that you have imposter syndrome, which somebody like, you know, would look at you and be like, how the do you have it? But I've suffered from the exact, like literally almost every time I'm at a table with somebody, because I went to a state school, drank my way through college, you know, that type of stuff. And so I'm like, oh, do I belong here? But then usually in about 5 to 10 minutes of being in that environment, I'm like, oh yeah, okay. Nobody knows what they're talking about. So we're good. Yeah. So how have you been able to, because you said you've been able to normalize certain things at a certain point and rewire your brain, like you just mentioned. How have you been able to kind of, I guess, leverage the imposter syndrome as opposed to let it hold you back?
I love that. And I think, you know, and by the way, I went to city school and I dropped out of that school. So like, I know the whole story. And so you know, for me, one other thing I would always coach people around is like, when you're thinking about taking an opportunity, like a new job, new role within an existing company or another one or a different company, the one thing that you want every time is that you want to feel nervous. You want to feel like, I don't know how I'm going to do that, right? You want to have that imposter syndrome. And if you take a job or a new role and you're like, I'm going to crush it, or I know how to do it, or like, you know, it's in the bag, that's a bad move, because you're all going to stay exactly the same. So I use that technique and, you know, like, I want that nervousness. So whatever opportunity I'm thinking about taking next, or like doing the thing that I'm doing for, I kind of look forward to it now. I'm just like, I want to feel like an imposter. I want to feel nervous of like, I don't know how the hell I'm going to do it. I have no idea how I'm going to do it. Because only when you have that, that's the only time that you're going to have growth. There is no growth if you know, I can do this job. It's easy. I've done this before.
Or you're just in the background popping Xanax and be like, okay, I can figure this out. I mean, every people resolve this differently, but okay.
Yeah. Not me. I run, but I'm, you know, default run to fire. So like, that's more.
Yeah.
That's why somebody explained that to me I forget who I was talking to, but they were like, actually, imposter syndrome is a good thing because it means you're growing. Because the fact of the matter is, you're at this level. When you get to this level, you've never been at this level before. So you're inherently uncomfortable with it. And then you've used the word, like, you settle in and now you're like, okay, I got this. And you don't have imposter syndrome anymore because you're there. But then you stretch to the next level and you're like, oh my God, I got imposter syndrome again. Like, what the hell is going on? But that's actually a really positive thing.
That's the definition of bravery, right? Bravery is not the absence of fear. Bravery is like knowing the fear, freaking out, and then doing it anyway, right? Like, that is bravery.
Not letting it hold you back.
No.
I love that.
One last quick question, and then we will let you go, my friend. Tupac or Biggie?
Oh my God, Biggie, man! I'm not.
What was the question?
I said Tupac or Biggie.
Oh, come on!
Biggie,
he's got sure. Biggie.
Yeah,
Biggie.
See, I know I'm an East Coaster here, but I'm Tupac, actually. I'm Tupac. But dude, his lyrics, his stories, his like the way he told stories. You got to appreciate this from the storytelling standpoint. Right, Biggie was just the beats and like having fun, but Tupac's shit meant something, man. That's why
that Netflix thing. I forgot what it is, but on Biggie that you should watch, which is like pretty cool because
so good.
He had this teacher who was a jazz teacher, and it was not just like his flows. He was just mimicking like this jazz flow. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Awesome.
Tupac or Biggie? Jen, what's your Tupac or Biggie?
Biggie. Oh yeah.
All right. So we're split. I'm Tupac. I'm Tupac all the way.
No. See where the top is great. Yeah. I thought Jen was going to say she's too young. She doesn't know that.
Oh, I'm getting this a lot today. What do I look like? I'm old, and I am
young.
All right,
Jen,
you're my favorite guest you've ever had. Thank you. I'm just going to carve that portion of the recording out and just listen to it all over and over every day.
That's your morning meditation.
Well, David, I couldn't have thought of a better guest to come on for our first show here. Man. Like, it's been an absolute pleasure as always. I learned something new talking to you, so thank you very much.
Yeah, you're a man.
It's been great. It's been great, Dave.
Take care. Bye. See you soon, John.
Cheers, man. Bye-bye.
John, how do we fucking follow that? That
not terrible, right?
So cool. He is so cool.
He's the coolest motherfucker I know. I'm not joking you. Like, he's the most humble dude you'll ever come across. Yes. He's the most thoughtful dude you'll ever come across. Like, when you say man crush, abso-fucking-lutely do I have a man crush on him, right?
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah. How can you not? How can you not? I mean, it's not even just like fine. The success aside, you can it feels like it's just going to come naturally, but he's so thoughtful, and it's like his focus on work ethic, his humble beginnings, I love his comments about the imposter syndrome and the nervous feeling, because to be honest, I've been feeling that a lot lately because I had so much change and transition going on in my life, and I'm freaking the fuck out about it. But he actually just made me feel comfortable. Like, in that moment, I'm like, oh, this is a good thing, because most of the time you're in it, you're like, how am I going to get out of this?
It makes so much sense why someone like him has like repeated success. Because even just when he was talking about like going and being on the board of an art museum, you would never catch me doing that, because I would be like, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. And he was like that too, and he did it anyway. Totally. I'm like, that's so admirable to have the courage to do that where you don't fit in. Like, that's so badass. Yeah.
But you think about it too, I mean, I think, in John, you and I talk about this a lot, but like, he just has such a sincere give a shit factor about something in particular that he's passionate about, right? One of the things you'll notice is,
my friend, authenticated. There's not one person who is better at being authentic than Dave Cancel.
Yes.
Wow.
That was killer.
That's why when we came up with Authenticated, and I was like, you guys, all right, I'll take the first guess. I'm like, who is one of the more authentic people I know who's successful and interesting? And because there's a lot of other people I know who are successful and interesting, but they put on a show, they put on a facade, whatever it is, they kind of make things sound better than they are. David will never make things sound better than they are. If he's in the shit, he's in the shit. If he's doing well, he's doing well. And so I thought, for these conversations, for what we're trying to build here, there's few people out there that I would tap into for more than him. So
that does it. I feel like we were just scratching the surface. I mean, it was.
We didn't even. That's why.
I'm like, well, what if we? I want to go down so many avenues of like his life. Like, dude, what?
Now you know.
If people aren't following Dave, what he's doing, you want to be inspired. Go watch.
I mean,
what he's doing.
So many amazing lessons, though. There's so many like great nuggets for anybody listening to this. It's just like how to be a great leader. Mm-hmm. I love his commentary on how to know whether or not it's the right time for you to leave an organization, or whether or not it's the right time for you to push for more because you're doing this, but the company's kind of doing this. Like that whole framing of thinking about that is so great for everybody that's listening, that's thinking like, because right now everyone just be like, oh, is this the right place for me? Can I go get a promotion somewhere else? Mm-hmm. Is it like I feel like we're in this cycle where people are leaving jobs a lot faster and a lot maybe sooner than maybe they should. And I think it's maybe because they haven't even had a way of thinking about, well, wait, should I stay here longer? Right. Or like, because if you're not really aware of whether the company is, you're just thinking about yourself, then I think you're missing something. And I thought it was genius the way he explained that.
I think it's also just really cool to see someone who's earned their way there. Like, I think, sometimes you're like so distant from these people and you come into a company and you're like, oh, this person has had things handed to them. I'm so lit up by people that didn't have things handed to them and they worked their way up, because it's like, there's nothing different about him than anybody else. It's just like, he worked harder at it than you did. I love that.
And that right there, Jen, like that's what people have always said. It's funny. A lot of what he said legitimately is almost word for word. I might have gotten it from him, because I have my 12 personal guidelines to success. And literally the first one is work hard, work smart and hard. And when people say, well, John, how have you gotten to where you are? I'm like, I've worked my fucking ass off. Like, I'm not that smart. There's one thing I knew and I had the same talk track as him. Coming in, I knew I wasn't the smartest kid in the room. I knew I wasn't the most privileged, but I knew I could control one thing, which was my work ethic. And I promise you, there's nobody out there that will beat me on that, because that's what I can control. I can't control necessarily how smart I am compared to you, my wit, those type of, that I can build on those, but I can't control those. I can absolutely control how hard I work. And that's always been my driver. It's just like, all right, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, but I'm going to outwork whoever the hell it is to get there. So that's why
he made a also really interesting comment though about work ethic, because I think that's something that I think we all, at least for me, I worry about, like, okay, are we getting the right kind of output or work from kind of what I'll call Gen Zs, Gen Xs, whatever, not to label anybody anything, but it's like, how do you evaluate that now in this remote hybrid environment, right? Yeah. And I think to his point, and this is something that I learned early on in my career at Salesforce, is like Salesforce is a pretty ego-driven organization, and somebody told me, my old boss told me at one point, he's like, dude, just let your work speak for itself. My job as your manager is to elevate you, is to take what you're doing and to give it a microphone. You don't do that yourself. Let your work speak for itself, and then I'll give you I'll be the microphone for you. And I had to trust him with that, and it worked. But I feel like oftentimes we feel the need to both try and to do the work and be the microphone. And in his case, what David was saying is like, dude, the people up top, they know, they can see it.
That was actually the question I was going to ask him, though, was that fine line, because I go back to what you said there. Like my dad, for instance, my dad was an engineer. He's literally the smartest person I've ever met in my entire life. Like AWACS built these things, huge stuff. And he was he was engineer. He was pure, the work should speak for itself. But he would always inherently get frustrated because dipshit Joe, over there has been self-promoting himself, even though his work is not as good and he's getting promoted. And my dad never really understood me because I'm in sales. And so I'm about, not self-promotion, but like getting the word out there. And he struggled his entire life because he was so fucking good and so smart, but people didn't recognize it. That his higher ups, they recognized it, but they didn't promote him because of that. So there's this delicate balance of not self-promotion, but also just not purely letting the results do. Because you think about it this way, I tell reps all the time, like, if you miss your quota and you don't know why, you're in trouble. But if you miss your quota and you show me like what you've learned and those metrics, I'll give you a lot more credit. If the work ethic is there, I'll give you a lot more credit. But you still got to be like, I'm a manager. I got 10 other reps going around here. Yeah, you hit your numbers. I look at very basic metrics. So I was going to ask him, like, what is that fine line of self-promotion without the ego component to it? And because too many people who let the work speak for itself sit in that work.
Yeah, totally.
It's dependent on having a good leader. That's the thing. Like if the world had tons of good leaders, I would say like put faith in the system. But it's like there are so many leaders that have a target on their back. So all they do is advocate for themselves because they're trying to cover their ass. So it's like they're not going to take the airtime to highlight someone else. The best leaders I've ever worked for were always so good about it. And I think that's why I stuck it out in sales for so long, because I was like, gosh, you really you work hard, you do the right things, you constantly never stop learning, and you do move up. But I look at other people that have come and gone from the sales profession, and I'm like, they didn't have that. I don't blame them for bailing. I'd be like, this sucks. Like, I don't want to stay here, work my ass off, and never learn or move or anywhere.
Yeah. No. I mean, I think at the end of the day, Jen, it boils down to the leader, right? It boils down to the leader in place. And it's your first line manager, it's their manager, it's the CEO of the company. It's like, it all starts at the top and trickles its way down.
I loved his part where he said, if I failed, it didn't really mean that much because he didn't have much. Like, I was like, that is such a cool way of looking at it. You'd think it would be the inverse where you're like, oh, I don't have much. It's everything matters. I have to get this right. But having that mindset of like, if I fail, okay, I'm back to where I started. I thought was such a cool reframe of how most of us think.
Yeah.
Yeah. My favorite was My favorite was definitely the figure it out, because I do believe that we've lost that. Like I actually talk about this a lot, like the Gen Xer, and I'm going to be very general here on my,
be careful not to piss anybody off. No.
The Gen Xer, we were one of the last groups, but hear me out. We were latchkey kids. Our parents weren't around, so we had to figure it out. So when we went home and we were bored, our parents were like, get the fuck out of the house and go play. Come on back before dinner. So we inherently figured it out. But now with my daughter, Charlotte, 13 years old, every moment of her life is structured, right? They go from school to this hour to this hour. They have soccer practice from this hour to this, right? All that stuff. And so and then they're taught to the MCAS, like they're taught to the test. There's no critical thinking, right?
Yeah.
So now you have a kid who's been structured their entire life, and you put them into the workforce and you have a jackass manager like me say, all right, kid, figure it out. And they're like, what are you talking about? Figure it out. Like, what do you mean? Tell me what to do. And then the problem with that is somebody like me, if you don't know what to do, let me tell you exactly what to do.
Yes.
Here's a script, here's a template, here's your deck, whatever. And they just read the script. They read the template.
Or they go like, I don't feel empowered now. I just gotta I'm stuck in a box and I want to be more creative. So I'm gonna do a side hustle. You're like, dude, all right, I don't have time for that. My one takeaway was, of course, I forgot it because you're both yours were so good. Oh, his approach on never stop learning.
Yeah.
Like it is so, as a leader, oftentimes you feel like I've got a task to do. This is, I got to get this, I got to do this. And I felt like David is the kind of leader and the kind of person that I actually really admire about the fact that he's like, no, I want to go learn about how to do other things. I want to go learn about different parts of the business. I want to go spend time with customers. I want to spend time, not just with my engineers, but with salespeople, with CS. And he just has this like authentic desire to keep learning. And I think as human beings, that continues to motivate and inspire us. And it will keep you at a place, at a company a lot longer if that environment exists. So I think it's both important for companies, but also for you as an individual to never lose that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amen.
This has been the first episode of the Authenticated podcast. I think it went pretty well. I don't know about you guys.
I think so.
All right, everybody. Well, keep it real out there. Have some fun. Hey, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. With your support and our incredible guests, we're one of the top sales podcasts out there right now, and I can't thank you enough. Now, to keep the momentum going, it would mean the world to me if you could go and leave a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform and share some of your favorite episodes with your network. Also, I am super excited to be launching my new newsletter, where I'll be sharing everything I know and everything I'm learning along the way while I'm out there selling every day just like you. Go to jbarrows.com/newsletter to sign up today. Let's all level up and make this happen together.